Well, Chinyelu, thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
Thank you, Hunter. Thank you so much for having me on the Mindful Mama podcast. I'm so happy to be here.
Good. Good. Well, I'm excited to talk to you. I had a great time talking to you on your podcast, and I'm enjoying your little book of parenting. It's so sweet. And you write about something that I wanted to kind of focus in on this conversation a little bit, which is you write about a thing that I have found this to be true, also in my experience, that provides more harmony and in general in the family and less struggle with transitions, which is like this is where I'm sure you get all your questions and I get so many questions, and that is rhythm, right? So why is rhythm and routine so important for children's development and their stability kind of day to day?
Yeah, very good question. I'm always so happy to talk about rhythm. I've been at times calling myself the rhythm lady because I'm all about rhythm. Rhythm is what saved me in parenting, what made parenting for me a very joyful, literally very joyful experience as I parented my three children. And so I think a lot of parents know, but it's always wonderful to just kind of keep repeating this message that rhythm gives to a child, especially thinking of young children, a sense of stability and a sense of safety. And as children grow, rhythm provides that beautiful structure that organizes the day so that the day can flow well each day. Rhythm, I have found rhythm to be something that provides parents a sense of predictability also. And in terms of planning ahead for the day, they know what to expect. And that lessens mental fatigue, decision fatigue. So rhythm is something that just supports everyone in the family. Yes.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, my daughter was a highly sensitive kid, and we needed everything we could get to kind of help her be not become explosive on a day-to-day basis. And rhythm was a huge part of that. We had for a long time, we don't have it anymore now that my kids are now 18 and 15, a weekly meal rhythm. And it wasn't a plan, it was a rhythm where it was like Sunday was vegetarian, Monday was rice, and we would have something go with rice.
Yeah.
Tuesday was soup, and Wednesday was noodles, and Friday was pizza, right? Like, or it was just like they knew what to expect. What night is it? And they would actually kind of, make their week. They would kind of mark the time in their week by, was it pizza night or was it pasta night yet?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about when you're talking about rhythm?
Yeah, that's one area of it. Planning, meals rhythmically, dinners rhythmically. And that is something also, another area within rhythm within our day where we can bring in this consistency, this predictability. And also for parents, like when I did that, when my children were young, oh my goodness, it was like such a blessing. I knew ahead of time, and on certain days I could prepare ahead of time. When I went grocery shopping, you're at the store, there was a focus. I had my list. I knew what I was going to make. And that, of course, just really supports someone in just a parent in this situation in being more intentional about what they're doing and how the day's going to look in this particular instance, thinking about meals, what they're going to prepare, and bringing balance into the meals. I think it helps one to less likely run to a fast food location and get food because of not knowing what you want to make and you're exhausted. And so, yeah, that's one aspect, like one aspect of rhythm. Yes.
And you write in your book that, well, I do have to say, yes, like it was so easy. Like I knew I would just put on a pot of rice and I'd be like, okay, let me figure out something to go with this. I'm not a big, detailed planner, but it made it easier. But you write in your book that it helps kids learn to be more flexible and gain confidence because they know what to expect of them. It's interesting that like sometimes we resist, I think, things that are rhythmic because it feels rigid to us, but it actually helps kids to be more flexible. Talk to me about that and maybe some other ideas for rhythm.
Yes, yeah. Well, I'll talk about specifically maybe a little bit giving an example of my time in the classroom, because I think, when we see rhythm working in a classroom with 14 children, 2 to 4 or 5 years old, then we really see, like, I really got to see the impact of that and the benefits of that in a very big way. Now, I saw it also with my 3 children, but with 14 children, one really gets to see that play out. And so, yeah, I think, like for the children in the classroom, I cooked their lunches and they had snacks that we made right there. So they never brought in, they didn't have to bring in any food. And the lunches and the snacks both were served rhythmically. Monday, they knew what to expect. Tuesday, and so on and so forth. And then if something needed to be changed slightly because maybe it wasn't at the grocery store, because I did all the shopping too, then the children, I could supplement it or not supplement it, but exchange it for something else. And they were like so flexible because then I could say, this is what happened. But I mean, that rarely happened, but they were also more flexible in terms of trying new foods because I always tried to introduce a new food like as a side, not as the main dish, which I often recommend to parents. If you want to try something new, try it as a side, not as part of the main dish when you're serving meals rhythmically, because then children are more likely to try it out and more likely to be more flexible about that. And just thinking of the flexibility within the rhythm, like when children know what to expect and they can depend on it. I think some parents have the feeling that rhythm needs to be very rigid, which it doesn't, and that if something goes awry, then their child's going to lose it, but they don't. Because the way that rhythm flows from one activity to another with this breathing quality I always talk about, that is in us, in our breathing, is in nature all around us, is in breath, out breath, then we can always come back to rhythm again. And that is where children can gain resilience and be more flexible, so long as we return to it. And if we are somehow have to get out of it because of whatever happens, we return to it. Yes.
Yeah, I had this hope that my kid would be very flexible and I could just like take her to a folk festival and just like have her nap wherever she fell asleep. And that really, really did not work for me. She really, really needed more structure and rhythm than that. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of the opposite of the way we think, that some rhythm is actually going to help them be more flexible. What are other ways that we parents of young kids can have rhythm in their days? Would you think about having a similar rhythm to sort of, I guess, the daily flow, that kind of thing? You talk about nighttime, and we talk about nighttime routines. People want like a nice routine for that, but maybe during the day as well.
Yeah. So where I always start, Hunter, with parents, and I'm guiding parents right now in a new course that just came out in January called Home Rhythms Made Simple, to help parents plan the rhythm, understand rhythm, and bring those qualities to rhythm that helps make rhythm work in their home. And, it's so interesting. I often say, as simple as a concept as rhythm is, it is not easy to implement, especially if you're still struggling with understanding, at least through the lens of Waldorf, what this whole idea is of in-breath and out-breath and the flow of activities. So I always recommend to parents, when it comes to rhythm, to start with the 4 anchors in the day. And those would be meal times and bedtimes and time for play, independent play, and time outside in nature. So I start with getting that down on paper and the time frame that that happens, and then staying consistent with that. And then around the four anchors, that's when other things can happen in such a way that the child isn't thrown off completely and becomes either overwhelmed or dysregulated or confused, all of that. So that's where I always tell parents to start. Start with the four anchors. So that's where I'm guiding this first cohort, so to speak, in this new course that just opened up in January. So that I'm excited about it because it gets down to like very granular about rhythm and how to create rhythm and how to sustain it, and then where it needs to change and where it might need to have more flexibility, and not to be afraid of change within the rhythm, because that's one thing we know, that's a constant in life. There'll always be change. So we can prepare ourselves within the rhythm that we create for that.
Yeah, you mentioned being like a Waldorf teacher for many years. Mm-hmm. Some people in the listening audience are familiar with that. Some people aren't. Waldorf emphasizes this holistic approach to learning, integrating academics, arts, and practical skills. I know that there can be a pink womb-like room for younger ages, is what I've heard. And it's interesting, you cooked and shopped for all the meals. What can you walk us through how this philosophy kind of would play out in a typical day?
A typical day around rhythm, or just a typical, rhythm is the backbone. So I guess, yes, around rhythm, because yes, rhythm is the backbone, and especially when thinking of early childhood, but even into the grades. So in my classroom, I can kind of talk about what a typical day was like there. So the children would arrive, and then getting out of their cars, coming into the classroom, put on their slippers, and then they'd come into play. There was also the option of helping to chop vegetables or fruit or make bread for that we would have at snack time. And then they'd play, and then after play, it was time to clean up. And then after that, it was circle or story that I would do, and then snack time. And then after snack, they'd help to clear the table, and then they'd head outside to play outside for at least an hour. Now, on those very frigid, cold days, then we had to adjust so that, everyone could be safe. On the warmer days, they could be outside up to 2 hours playing, and which they just absolutely loved. And then back in for those who stayed for lunch. They'd come in, get ready for lunch and use the bathroom, come to the lunch table, and then it was rest time. But having said that, I think I need to also add, like I just kind of mentioned a bit ago about the in-breath and the out-breath. Mm-hmm. So just what our bodies do as we breathe, we breathe in, we breathe out, we breathe in, we breathe out. And this balance between in-breath and out-breath is what really supports the body in being in that, the nervous system being in that parasympathetic state. Mm-hmm. And so the flow of the activities during the day take that supremely into consideration. Like when I map out my day and thinking like sitting in the car coming to school, that's an in-breath. Mm-hmm. So when they get out, they need to move. So that playtime is an out-breath. And then they clean up, and then there's story time. And that is, an in-breath because it's a more focused time. And then they're going to use the bathroom. That's more of an out-breath, busyness, some of them diaper changes and, so on and so forth. So when there's balance with this in-breath and out-breath in the day, mm-hmm. it makes all the difference. The children are less overwhelmed, not dysregulated. Not to say that dysregulation doesn't happen, but boy, does it calm that down. And then we see the same thing happening in the grades. I was not a grades teacher, but 3 children who went through Waldorf right from practically birth all the way through to 12th grade, where they, again, there's that car ride into school. whether they're driving at, later age or being driven by the parent. And then they have movement in the morning. Sometimes the teacher will have them running. Sometimes they'll have other movement exercises that they're doing to kind of wake up their body and be in their body, which is what what's the desire is before they sit down for main lesson, which is a more inward, that's an in-breath focus time. And then there's a break where they have a break to eat snack, talk to each other, socialize. There's more of that out breath. So I won't go through the whole day, but I think you kind of get the idea of how the rhythm taking into, resting, really being formed out of this in-breath, out-breath balancing is the backbone of creating the day, shaping the day. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I wish that more schools would consider the whole body like that.
Yes.
My kids were I'm a big proponent of Montessori education, and there's a lot of choice about when you're moving and things like that, and just kind of taking in the whole body and moving. I think that's so important. That's so cool that they help make their own bread.
They do.
I
Yeah.
thought it was amazing when my daughter was 2 and she helped make muffins just one day. Every day making bread, that's a lot.
Well, they did it once a week. They would the children made bread. They would have loved to have made it more. And if there was a special occasion, we would, but they made bread, once a week. And that bread day was just, really wonderful.
That's so cool. One of the things that I know about Waldorf education, and many people know, is the delayed formal reading instruction until around the age of 7. And this, of course, runs counter to a lot of mainstream educational thinking. I know that my own daughter was a really precocious reader, and it might have driven her crazy because she was in chapter books at 4.5. So she was really reading. So what is the reasoning behind this? And do you know of any research that talks about its effectiveness?
Yeah, well, I think, one can find research coming out of Finland, probably even Denmark, about delaying reading until age 7. I find it interesting that the word delaying is used as opposed to what we kind of talk about in Waldorf education, the developmental appropriateness of when a child should be reading. Now, having said that, if a child reads earlier, the child reads earlier. There's no issue, of course, with that whatsoever. Like one of my daughters, one of her friends was reading in kindergarten, all on her own. She just started reading. And some children, it'll take longer. But a couple of the reasons why that reading is left until really more like second grade, because in first grade, they're learning letters. They're learning the alphabet. And they're learning it in such a beautiful way through stories. And so that this kind of way of learning, that holistic approach, is coming not only from the head perspective, the intellect, but also through the arts and also through movement. There will often be movement. Maybe they're playing out in movement the letters, like B could be for the bear who bounded outside in the garden because he saw a buzzing bee. They connect it, and the teacher really enunciates, and then it forms like a picture for them. It's not just that's bee. Everybody say bee, or other words that begin with B. My children just all really enjoyed learning, that as a precursor, learning to read, learning the letters in that way, and drawing it out in their main lesson books with these crayons and bright colors, and it's beautiful. And so, and the one of the reasons why is that it's, in terms of thinking, developmentally, not all children are ready to read early. And yet something happens, within the body when a child turns 7. Their brain is, cognitively, they're more ready. Neurologically, they're more ready. The brain is now really more ready for taking on academics. And that is something that the education is really focused on teaching children to the developmental phases. So Waldorf distinctly has, unlike I think any other education, this focus on the 3 7-year periods in childhood: birth to 7, 7 to 14, and 14 to 21. Like in those phases, cognitively, neurologically, the brain is taking these leaps at these 7-year marks. It's not like a leap overnight, of course, but it's developing, and then these leaps, happen at these 7-year marks. And so we want to, in Waldorf education, the goal is to make reading something joyful and bring it in such a way so that children want to learn, to love learning, as opposed to being feeling like pressure or stress around it. And not to say like it eliminates all stress, because not all children are ready right at 7. Like one of my children didn't learn to read until she was in the summer of 4th grade. It took her quite a while, but we knew in conversation with the teacher that everything, and in just seeing her, we read a lot right from early on, and we could see that everything else was developing normally. There was nothing to be alarmed about. And so my husband and I thought, let's give her the time that she needs. And I'm so glad that we did. We didn't put the stress or pressure on her. And then I would think it was like the summer of 5th grade or so. I kid you not, she was reading 13 books a week, novels a week. And when it clicked, it clicked. And that was one of the things that we found so beautiful about the education, that she had time. There was no pressure. She didn't lose any self-confidence over that experience of like, you should be reading now. You must be reading now. What's going on? We're going to send you here for extracurricular, remedial. And her confidence stayed so strong, And so it was just really, that's the part that I experienced myself, and that's another part that I see that the parents value about the education, those that choose it. And so children in the early years, like as early as I get them, I should say, when I was in the classroom, they are learning the precursors to reading. They're hearing oral stories. They are, in their play telling stories themselves, and that's allowing their ability through the storytelling to recognize letters and words, and comprehension is strengthened. And so I could go on, but just to give that as an example.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I know that, I've heard rumors that in Silicon Valley that a lot of the big tech people have kind of embraced some Waldorf school, and I know that Waldorf education has these elements of connection to nature and storytelling and play. What do parents and teachers in a Waldorf community now do about the presence of screens and online learning and phones and things like that? What the heck happened during the pandemic? I have no idea if you would be able to do that via remote learning. So what is the sort of stance on all the technology at this point? COVID did bring on some changes, but I'll just back up a little bit. Like, I think from the many conversations I had with a number of parents when I was in the classroom, is that they felt that Waldorf was a complete no to technology and to screens. Mm-hmm. And what I tried to help parents realize is that it's not about a complete no. What it is about for every season, there's a time
for what needs to happen or what can happen. And so if we look at it in that way, so this birth to 7 season is a season where screens do not help a child developmentally. And I have seen over the number of years I was in the classroom, the benefits of that, and also with children that did have a lot of screens, like how that held them back in terms of them being able to be regulated, in terms of them being able to sit through a story that I was telling orally, even with puppets moving, a whole scene, because it wasn't moving fast enough, not as fast as a screen. COVID was interesting because it did have this impact in terms of like just even thinking of early childhood. And so the remote learning, many teachers did as I did. We sent packets home with the children of stories and crafts and things that, maybe like recipes that they could make at home. And I recorded stories for children so that the parents could play the stories for them to listen to. And that seemed to go well, but I didn't do anything that they were going to watch on a screen. And in fact, the stories that I recorded for the children became the other podcast channel that I have, Stories for Children. Yeah. But I think the greater impact that it had within Waldorf was children, like let's say in the lower and middle school, because so much of what the teacher needed to present as their main lesson of the day had to be recorded. It was something that they had to watch. I know some teachers tried their best to work with that, probably with an audio and the visual. I think maybe what a lot of people may not be aware of is that even before COVID, when my children were in like 8th grade and then into high school, they were on the computer with with limited time. It wasn't just free reign to do research and to gather information or to do homework. Most of their homework wasn't sent via the email or that they had to do on their laptops. But I think people think that within Waldorf it's like no screens forever. But it's more of this high or deep intention as to what the goals are, and that is to meet the child developmentally in a way where they're really supporting their growth and their development in their mind, in their body, in their soul. And that's where the holistic perspective comes in on all levels, in everything that is decided. So maybe I hope I kind of answered that. It's just a lot I could touch on, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine a lot of the parents, maybe were all in, maybe did not have a lot of screen exposure at home, but I imagine there were some that did. And I wonder if you could, was there a difference in kids that came in? It's interesting to see because it does seem, it seems like bringing it in a little bit. And I know that, big influence on me was John Payne, Simplicity Parenting,
Mm-hmm.
and his stance is Waldorf influence and saying like no screens before the age of 7. And I thought that was kind of bananas for a kid in this day and age. And also it's a lot, I think it's high demand on parents and caregivers. It's wonderful if you're a Silicon Valley exec and you can pay like a wonderful nanny to take care of your kids who's holistic and screen free, and that's great. But if you're a parent who's working from home and has to take a meeting with your boss and you have a 6-year-old around the house, it might be time for Bluey. I don't know. It's just, it sounds like it could be a lot. I mean, how can parents kind of maintain a balance between these sort of holistic ideals of, those anchors of time in nature and time for sleep and time for unstructured play and things like that, and yet also balance a life where they're working and meeting demands outside of this?
Yeah, very, very good question. I think, let's see how to approach answering your question. But so I'll start here. So I was a stay-at-home mom for a number of years, un up until my third child entered into first grade, and then I started working at the Waldorf school. And up until that time, I was able to maintain, at least in my children's early childhood years, no screen time. So first, my son, and then my other two girls who came, I held that. My son, in this day and age, I know it's so much harder. My son did not have screen time until he was 9, when he saw his first movie in black and white that my husband chose, an old one from the 50s. But
Did you never go to a restaurant that had a screen?
oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All
we
right. Just at home.
yeah, no, yeah, at home. Yeah,
Okay.
because I do very much so believe that what happens at home is what sets the stage
Yeah.
in terms of family values.
Okay.
That happens at home. We can't make other people do what we want them to do. So our family values. And so what I found was that with my son, not having any screen time when he was little, even at 2 years old, he didn't rely on that. And I didn't want him to come to rely on that at all. There was no time screen time was ever scheduled in. And I just never turned it on. And so he was able to play and be deep in his imagination, such that I could, even when he was around 2.5, I could take care of, some self-care needs, do cooking, cleaning, do other things. And I was even, I'm an architect by education, and I would take on various projects on my own from time to time. I could work on that, and he would play, because that's what was the norm for him. And that is also what helped him to be so self-regulated and be able to occupy his own time and not come looking for me to entertain him or turn on something to entertain him. And there was just such beauty in that. He could be in deep play for an hour or before coming to me and needing something. And so I continued this with my two girls, and the same thing. And what I found that was also so beautiful is that it helped them to form and bond relationships with each other, because they spent a lot of time playing with each other and talking and working things out. If there were arguments, or whatever would come up or come to me, or work it out on their own, which I'm finding out now that they're 34 and 31 and 26, that some of these decisions that they made among each other I had no idea about, because they were working it out among the three of them. And so this is what I believe, Hunter. I believe that a lot of parents don't have the belief that their child is actually capable of being without screen time. Mm-hmm. And so that then causes them to want to rely on it. I'll turn this on for you. But young children, the youngest even, are so capable. But we don't give them that space and that time. And it's, I know it's not easy. And yet, I always encourage parents to try it, give it a try, because it got to the place very quickly as a teacher in the classroom where out of the 14 children, I could, in my mind, say to myself, this one has screen time. That one doesn't. That one doesn't have, that one's got a lot of screen time. And it really showed itself when it was time to sit down for story time. It was so pronounced, so pronounced that you just knew it. Yeah. And so that for me was really the evidence that I needed to see on top of the research that I was reading. It was visible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no argument for you because we feel it. Anybody who has a smartphone, who has stuff, and, I mean, dear listeners, you listen to podcasts. Sometimes I'm like, I want to get a simplified dumb phone, for lack of a better word. But then I'm like, would it be weird if I was a podcaster? I was like, I couldn't listen to podcasts. That would be so strange. And I probably won't. I continue to try to be mindful about the effects and things like that. But I really look forward to the times where I'm disconnected.
Yeah.
I really look forward to those times and carve those out. And I worry that as a society, we're getting so used to this level of distraction and I can feel the inability to focus and the way your brain, that dopamine hit of wanting more of that distraction, right? And the inability to enjoy simple things but then the phone, it's not like it's this rich object that is pulling your distraction. It's just like a subpar substitute for real world engagement. Yet it uses up all our energy for engagement. And so then people are not engaging with each other in real life. I'm really worried about that. So sometimes the listeners tell me I want you to push back a little more on your guests. But I don't have any argument for you, because I can see it and feel it in myself. And so, of course, with a developing brain, that much more.
Absolutely.
We're going to see it and feel it. I don't know. It's really, I think, changing the way we are as a human species.
It is. I've written in the past about how, why I didn't choose screen time for my children. And one of the main reasons was that, and Waldorf does talk about this, that a child who can have a childhood, especially when you think of those early childhood years, screen-free, they then are, working through their imagination. Their imagination is growing, developing, and they're also able to have their own thoughts without those, as often said in Waldorf, those pre-digested thoughts and ideas of somebody else. They get to have their own thoughts and dream up their own dreams and their own ideas. And that's what I wanted for my children. I also wanted them to be able to examine what was being told to them. And here's a very interesting story. When my children were young, we lived in Southern California, and my husband was on ski patrol up at Big Bear Mountain. And so we would go up there skiing on his rotation. And one time we stayed at somebody's cabin. They were like, oh, stay in our cabin. We've got lots of room. And they had brought up their grandchild. And then they put on a movie, which I never did for my children. And so we all sat there. And before the movie started, the grandmother said, oh, or the mother was like, oh, I was told this is a very child-friendly movie, and everything about it, is very child-friendly and not scary. And I don't know what other words she said. So at that time, I only had 2 children. My son was, I believe, 5 or 6 years old. and the movie gets started, and he
I bet it
starts.
wasn't. There's only one completely non-scary movie, and that's Mary Poppins. I'm just saying.
and as the movie was playing on, my son had all these questions for her. He said, "Well, that's really kind of scary. I thought you said this wasn't scary. I thought da 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 da." And he questioned the movie
Oh, wow.
as it was playing, and kept asking her like, "What is that supposed to be about? I thought that da 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 da." And my husband and I just sat there quiet. And our younger daughter, she was not interested, so she was just kind of playing with her socks or mittens. And then finally, I think it was the grandmother. The grandmother looked at us. She said, I'm going to take it off. She goes, because at one point she just got so flustered. She goes, I don't know. I don't know. They told me. And then my son was like, who's they? And so at that point, she was like, I think I'm going to take it off and turn it off and you guys can play. And I thought, my husband and I thought to myself, we both thought like, wow. It was fantastic to see him question and not just accept what was there being shown to him. Mm-hmm. And so that to me kind of highlights where we want our children to be in their own thinking minds and not just accepting, oh, this has been put out and they say, yes, it's for my age, I can watch it, so I'll just accept that.
I have a similar story for you at a different age.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter had a smartphone. She was 14 or 15. She's 18 now. At one point, she got TikTok because everybody her age had TikTok. Mm-hmm. She had TikTok, I don't know, maybe 6 months. And then she was like, I don't think I like the way this feels. Mm. She's like, I don't. And she took off TikTok and she's never had it on her phone again. And I thought, oh my God, thank God. Evaluating this, and has a self-awareness to see how this feels. I mean,
yes. Yeah. I'm glad you said that. Self-awareness. Yeah, that's huge.
That's huge. Well, we have talked about so much, the rhythm, the Waldorf, the screens. Is there anything that we missed, Chinyelu, that you would like to share with the listener? And again, Chinyelu's book is The Little Book of Parenting, How to Nurture Your Child to Their Full Potential. And you can find it anywhere books are sold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I suppose maybe what I could add is that about The Little Book of Parenting, since you mentioned that, and thank you so much, is that The Little Book of Parenting was something that all the topics in there, something that was just really growing in me from my years of experience with Waldorf education. I first stepped into Waldorf education in 1992. And that's when it was new to me and learning about it, because my educational background, I grew up and was educated in Nigeria. First in a Nigerian school and then an American school, but most of my years there in a Nigerian school system, which was off of like the British school system. So very intense, extremely rigorous. And I remember at age 15 going to my mom and saying, is education only about memorization and regurgitation? There's got to be something else out there. And so already, even at age 15, it was something that was, as a question, that was living in me. And then when I came upon Waldorf education through a friend, I thought, wow, this is it. This is it. I need to learn more. So I had no intentions of becoming a teacher at all, because I already completed my degree in architecture at that point. And so, but it just drew me in. And I really wanted it for my son at that time, and then who was almost 2, not quite. And then, of course, for my 2 girls. And so the Little Book of Parenting was just something like right from the beginning that, like I said, was just really growing in me. And so I was so excited to have been approached by a publisher and be able to write that book. And it just, not saying every part of it was easy, but it flowed. And what I really wanted, the message in that book, is to be able to empower parents to know that they are essentially the guiding light for their children. And they have the wisdom, the inner wisdom, to make the decisions that will help their child develop into their full potential. Now, yes, of course, we do need to be able to have something that helps us in that. And in my situation, it was Waldorf education. I think for other parents, it's something else. Yeah, so I hope that parents will, if they don't already, find the book, purchase the book, listen to the audio, if that's a better way, where I recorded it. Was able to do that, which was grueling but wonderful at the same time. And to know, like, with what I'm offering, that they can be empowered. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your time and sharing your experience and wisdom with me. It's really been a pleasure, Chinyelu. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hunter. Thank you for having me.